Did anybody get a chance, and I realize this is almost a redundant, or not redundant, but a rhetorical question, to watch the CNN town halls last night with I think they had four of the Democrats who are running for president who were appearing. And I say it's rhetorical because I know most of you listening aren't CNN people, and really, when it comes to what Democrats have to say, a lot of the people who listen to this radio show probably don't care whatsoever. But I caught little bits and pieces of it this morning. In the internet age, you can pick these things up the following day. There's no way I was going to stay up late to watch it. That wasn't in my. There are a few things I might stay up late to watch. Maybe a State of the Union address, something important like that, a really good ball game. If my team ever made it to the World Series, which I don't foresee happening anytime soon, I might stay up late for that. But I caught some of the discussion that took place with some of the candidates last night, and I want to mention this discussion there was a question from the audience that was addressed to Elizabeth Warren. She's Pocahontas, as she's called by President Trump. We're at 6 minutes after 9 o'clock. It's 55. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Warren seems to, now that she's down to 5%, I think, in polls among Democrats, likely Democrat voters. Now, a lot can change between here and the primary season. There's still a lot of time for people to make up their minds, and they're essentially kicking the tires right now when it comes to candidates to see who they would like as a nominee. But Warren, she suddenly is on board with the impeachment effort. But she's also, it seems, at every turn trying to out Bernie Sanders. So she was at the town hall on CNN, and in response to, I think, Sanders, she promises that she will make things even freer. That is, Bernie says college will be free. Elizabeth Warren, on the other hand, she pipes up and says, well, I'll make it freer.
To get a shot at a middle-class life, you've got to have some post-high school technical training, 2-year college, 4-year college, maybe graduate school, depending on who you are and what you're ending up doing. The position of the federal government has been good luck to you. You're on your own. The one thing they've done is they've lent tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of dollars to our students, and it is now crushing them. So my proposal is to say this isn't right. What we have to do as a country is roll back that debt. And so I have two parts to the proposal. Part one is that we say that we are going to roll back student loan debt for about 95% of students who have debt. That's part one. And part two is to make sure that we never get in this mess again on student loan debt, and that is to make college universally available with free tuition and fees, and to put more money into Pell Grants so that students of color, so that our poorest students have real access to college.
But everybody knows it's not free. It's free for the recipient, but they don't care, apparently, that somebody else is paying through the nose to take care of all of this. Point one. Point two, she says she's going to forgive student loan debt because it's crushing these young people. Well, maybe if we hadn't told them to go borrow $200,000 to get a degree in basket weaving, it wouldn't be crushing them. I heard somebody say, one of these talking heads, it might have even been her, that, well, you need a college education to get ahead in this world. No, you don't. She said post-secondary. No, you don't. We have a lot of vocational training right in high schools. So again, you don't they keep pushing this notion. She comes out of an academic background. So it's good for her. It's good for her business, and that is academics, to continually line everybody up and have them go into college, and she gets a paycheck no matter what, right? How about this? When I went to college, I think when I ended up borrowing some money, it wasn't a lot. I didn't borrow $100,000. I didn't borrow $50,000. I didn't borrow $20,000. I didn't borrow 15. It might have been a little under 10 grand over the course of a little of a 4-year degree and some graduate work that I did, and that was it. But it was still burdensome paying it off, and it took me 6 years, I think, to do it. It was still burdensome to pay it off. All right, well, wait a second. They're talking about reparations all the time. If you forgive somebody's debt today who borrowed $200,000 and they graduated 2 years ago and they're serving coffee somewhere at Starbucks and they can't pay the note, Well, what about the fact that I did it and I got it paid off, but it was tough. So how come I can't? Why don't they refund the money to me? After all, I did it. Why should the people today get something that I didn't get? You see, that's how America works any longer, doesn't it? So the people who went before managed to do it. And it was not always, as I say, easy to do it, but you did it every month because you were supposed to. I bring this up because it shows you how pandering they are. They're looking to just certain individual groups and saying, I'll give you this for free. And then they go over, they tell the students that, we'll give you this for free. Then they turn around and they go over to people of color and they say, you were treated poorly 150 years ago. Well, you personally weren't, but somebody that looked like you was treated poorly. We'll give you some money too. And they just keep doing this and doing this and doing this in hopes that they can buy elections. 11 minutes after 9 o'clock, it's 55. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. So, we got free college, we got free health care. What else have they said will be free? There's a long list, right? There's a long, the Green New Deal is going to cost us nearly $100 trillion. Maybe. How about the fact that we can't afford Social Security any longer? They're promising you all of these other things. This is going to be free. Don't worry about it. We'll never have to worry about the cost or the expense. And sure, taxes will cover it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then a story like this dropped yesterday. Philip Klein, writing at the Washington Examiner, trustees say Social Security and Medicare face $59 trillion long-term deficit. So while Bernie and Liz Warren and Buttigieg and all of these other people are promising you free, which does come with a price tag after all, you may not be able, when you retire, you may have to live under a bridge and beg for food. Trustees for the Social Security and Medicare programs on Monday announced that the long-term deficit facing the programs was a staggering $59 trillion. Trillion with a T. The $59 trillion figure, which is included in the annual report from the trustees on the finances of the programs, comes from taking the 75-year gap between projected revenues coming into the programs and the promised benefits. And it could be optimistic, because according to the trustees, and this is a quote, the Medicare projections shown here could be substantially understated as a result of other potentially unsustainable elements of current law. Well, we've had that before. If you look back and you see what Medicare and Medicaid were originally projected, back in the late 1960s, what they were projecting these programs would cost and what they actually cost, we're talking 4 to 5 times as much as those original projections. The writer goes on to say, measured another way, this represents 4.2% of the value of all the nation's expected economic output over the next 75 years. By way of comparison, to 2018, the defense budget represented 3.1% of gross domestic product. Okay, what does that all mean? Just a bunch of numbers, right? Percentages. That means the federal government could eliminate the equivalent of the current Pentagon budget each year relative to projections, or raise taxes by a comparable amount, and it still wouldn't be enough to close the gap. I've been saying it on this program for 4.5 years now. If you want these things in the future, if you want Social Security and you want Medicare and you want Medicaid and you want free college, you sure as heck aren't going to be able to afford tanks and ships and bullets and bombs. Those are all going to go bye-bye. You simply can't. When the government spends twice as much money every year as it brings in, and that give or take a few $1 trillion here and there, but when that happens, you simply cannot sustain this. It is not going to go on forever. And the only way we actually pay for all of this is other countries underwrite our debt, like China. Well, if China someday, because remember, President Xi in China, he doesn't care if you get your Social Security or not. He's got other priorities. And he's not the president of the United States, he's the president of China. So he wants eventually the money back. When I say they underwrite the debt, they loan us the money. And you may read the papers still. You may catch a little TV news. then you would be aware the Chinese don't necessarily have a really hunky-dory relationship with us. So if the day comes when they say, not only are we not going to loan you any more money, but we want the rest of it back, then what? And by the way, because you could not afford all of these programs, so what you did is you stopped building tanks and jets and battleships and carriers and the like. And these things were all said, and battleships don't play much of a role anymore. But if you eliminated all of those weapons so you could pay to cover the cost of Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and throw in Obamacare if you like, or free college, or whatever else is promised to be free. But in order to afford all of those things, you decided to scrap the military, and then suddenly the Chinese say, hey, we need our money back. And we say, well, we don't have it. Hey, we want the money back. We don't care how you pay it back. We want it back. Sorry, we're not giving it to you. Well, we see you don't have an Army or a Navy or a Marine Corps or anything like that left any longer. So we, as the Chinese, with our 1.5 billion people, are just going to come and take it. This is where we get into this security issue. And I don't know how you can explain this to these younger voters who are being fed this siren song by Sanders and Warren and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. There's a break with reality here. They do not understand how serious a situation this is. This is crisis. I read a few weeks ago, a writer in the Wall Street Journal said, we've been warned for years this is coming. Nobody does anything about it. They just stand around and they say, Russia, 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 or free, free, free. And they ignore the fact that this huge storm is brewing. But the writer at Wall Street Journal said, we were looking at this and saying, oh, the worst of times could be 15 to 20 years away. We're finally going to have the day of reckoning. But the writer at the Journal says, I think that the day of reckoning is going to be moved up significantly. That is in the next couple of years. Are you ready? Are you ready for what might be coming? Are you ready because a government that has promised you the moon, sun, and stars will not be able to deliver? Then how are you going to get by? How are you going to feed your family? How are you going to feed just yourself? How is any of this going to happen? And we got here simply because we all said, I paid into it, I'm getting it back. Well, you didn't pay enough into it, apparently, because they're short. Coming up on 20 minutes after 9 o'clock, we're at 54. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Speaking of the Wall Street Journal, a writer named Richard W. Johnson is writing there today, saying if you were planning on retiring, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should keep working. He said, actually, it probably would be better for your health if you continued to stay on the job. Depends on the job, I suppose, that you have. But this notion that you're going to retire and you're going to go out and photograph all the bumblebees in the garden and get in the big RV and travel all over the country, that may be a dream that some people do pull off. But for the majority of Americans, it's not how retirement is. So you're going to have to keep getting up in the morning with the alarm clock and going off to the job, perhaps well into your 70s, maybe until your 80s before you finally decide it's time to go. 20 minutes, as I said, after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Speaking of wars, we could be in a shooting war sometime soon. I know it's hard to believe, but things are getting a little bit what you might call difficult between the United States and Iran. I've got some details coming up.